What is up, everybody? Welcome back in to Shout at Buffalo Bills Football Podcast. We've had a couple days off here, got some time in with the family over the bye week, and we're all locked back in for Bills versus 49ers this week. It is a busy week. Ryan Talbot, and of course, as always, Shout is brought to you by Tops Friendly Markets, and right now at Tops, it is Christmas bonus going on right now. Christmas bonus is great. And this is a great comment, by the way, from Aaron over on YouTube. Tops is probably absolutely crowded right now. People getting ready for Thanksgiving, but Christmas bonus is on as well. How are you, my friend?
I am doing great. You're right. It's been a nice time off, but ready to get back and talk about some football.
Christmas bonus at Tops is happening, and man, it is awesome right now. Let me just bring up this read here. 'Tis the season to save on groceries and all your holiday gifts. Christmas bonus at Tops. If you do that, you save $10 at all your other favorite stores and restaurants. With over 25 gift cards to choose from, there's something for everyone on your list. And don't forget to treat yourself to some extra savings too. Save on great gifts like toys and games from GameStop or Toys R Us at Macy's. Things for your home from Lowe's, that new big screen TV you want from Best Buy, and so much more just by shopping at Tops. Be Santa's biggest little helper with Christmas bonus from Tops. It's cold down here, Ryan. It's real cold.
It
Got a little crazy.
Looks
Got a little crazy.
for you.
Bye week, shaved off the beard for the first time, I want to say, since my son was like 1 year old, and he's 10 now. So probably about 9 years. I brought the beard down to like a lighter level, and I walked downstairs and my kids saw it and they're like, oh my gosh, this is so crazy. Go shave it all off because we want to see what it looks like. And I listened and I did it, and it's terrible. It'll never happen again. So get your screenshots.
It's not a bad look, but you're right. Cold, you picked maybe the worst time of the year to do it with the weather changing, but it's not a bad look, Mr. Parrino.
So an absolutely electric day down at Orchard Park today, and happy Thanksgiving to everybody watching. If you're watching on YouTube, thank you so much. Hit that like button, subscribe to the channel as well. Matt Milano, full participant in practice today. No more red non-contact jersey, Ryan. I think we are on our way to Milano potentially returning this Sunday against the 49ers. And, there's a couple things. Number one, during the practice period where it's open to the media, usually that's the time where, they're working on special teams on the one field. On the other field, defense specifically, they'll be going over position by position. You'll see Taylor Rapp and DeMar Hamlin working with Joe Dana. You'll see Greg Rousseau, Von Miller, Ed Oliver, Daquan Jones working with Marcus West. And usually it's been Terrell Bernard and Dorian Williams with Al Holcomb. Well, today it was Terrell Bernard and Matt Milano. And so I think as we get towards this game, I think the big question is more so than whether or not he's going to play. And sure, there's a chance that he does. They don't activate him. They wait till next week. They make it through the week, and they're just like, you know what? He's not 100% there yet. We'll wait on it. But I feel like it's trending in that direction. The big next question then, Ryan, is if he is active and he does play, what is his role on Sunday? Because right now you look at this thing, Dorian Williams is sitting here starting 11 games for the Bills. He has 97 tackles on the season, on pace for 150 this season. If you were to start the whole season, that would be 49 more than Matt Milano in his most productive tackling season back in 2019. It's more than just tackles, right? Like there's a lot of elements of the game that I think you level up with Matt Milano in the game instead of Dorian Williams. But how do you think this looks on Sunday if Milano in fact does play?
Well, I think you have to ease him back into the lineup. Again, he's probably, if he does play, he's obviously in very good shape, but getting into the football shape, the reps, the 49ers have long drives that they sustain. I think it'd be very easy for Milano to kind of get winded in those scenarios. So you want to be smart about ramping a guy up like that when they've been out of action for so long. So I think as the weeks go on, though, you keep ramping him up to the point where then it is probably just that two-man show again with Milano and Bernard. And, that doesn't mean that Dorian Williams can't get sprinkled in from time to time, get some reps. There might be some matchups where they can try that three linebacker set as well, and that'd be the best three linebacker set they've had in quite some time. But I think you want to be smart about how you bring him back up to speed. You don't just want to throw him out there for a significant percentage of the reps right here in this first week back if he does come back in that 49ers game. So slow play it, and then as the next 2 to 3 weeks, continue increasing the percentage of snaps that he's on the field.
Terrell Bernard continues to show off his leadership, his, they put a captain C on his chest for a reason. Talking to him today, and he was asked about like what this could potentially mean for Dorian Williams. And he said, listen, whatever happens, adding a player of the caliber of Matt Milano back to your football team is something that you always welcome and you want to do. Everybody in that room rallying around that. Dorian Williams has to play a role. Matt Milano will play the role that he fits into. And I agree with you. Like, I do think it's going to maybe not be 100% of the snaps right away, but I wouldn't be surprised if it's close or some type of rotation right from the jump. I mean, he looks ready and raring to go. I mean, coming off the field, we got about 80 seconds with Matt Milano today. Man of very few words. But he said he's feeling great. Honestly, like, to me, the other, like, the undersold part of all of this is that he's been sitting, the last 3 months rehabbing the bicep injury, which has given him all the time in the world to really get that leg, that injured leg from last season back to 100%. So I think any way that you want to use him, even if it's at the start, throwing him out there in some situational spots where maybe he's a little bit more productive than Dorian Williams in year 2. A guy like, I've always thought that one of the strengths of Milano's game is his recognition and his quick twitch to fire through gaps. And I think that could really help in the run game, specifically this week against Christian McCaffrey. The San Francisco 49ers have not been running the ball very well, even less effectively since McCaffrey's been back, which is kind of surprising. So now you add potentially a Milano, a little bit of a torpedo in your defense. And I think there's some situational spots where you really like that. And I know he's so good in coverage, but I think that there's a lot of different ways that they can use him.
Yeah, absolutely. You want to, be creative in the usage, especially if he's not going to be playing 100% of the reps. But against the run, especially, and, I think maybe the 49ers are kind of learning that even with a Christian McCaffrey, you have a Jordan Mason, you got to sprinkle a guy like that in. When they used him last week for the first time, he ripped off a long run. He has a little bit more of a physical style to his game, and it's still going to be a test for Buffalo with that 1-2 punch, or even if it's just Christian McCaffrey getting the bulk of the load. So someone like Milano coming back potentially for this game is a huge boost for this Bills defense.
Speaking of a boost, Ryan, this Saturday we're gonna get a huge boost because we are live in person at Turning Stone Resort Casino. I cannot wait for this event. If you are in driving distance, if you can make the drive out, maybe you live somewhere in central New York, Rochester, even if you're in Buffalo, take a day trip. Go out to Turning Stone, get a room for the night, and then drive back first thing Sunday morning, like I'm gonna do for Bills 49ers on Sunday. We cannot wait. It's gonna be Shout Live from Turning Stone. What's up, everybody? Matt Parrino here with Ryan Talbot. We're the host of the Shout Buffalo Bills football podcast, and we have some big news. We're coming back to Turning Stone Resort Casino. That's right, New York Rec and Social Club, November 30th, the night before the Bills host the San Francisco 49ers. It is going to be a night of Bills football, talking, food, everything, Ryan. We cannot wait.
That's right, Matt. Nobody travels like the Bills Mafia. Come out and join us for the podcast and hang out with us after. The event is open to the public. Guests must be 18 years or older. Come out and let's get after it.
It's going to be a live edition of Shout, a Buffalo Bills football podcast. We're previewing Bills versus 49ers. See you then. That's the last time I get to do that, Ryan.
That's right.
Damn, did I deliver? Because you were talking for at least 5 seconds after that video hit.
I was waiting. I'm like, okay, he didn't press the button yet. So I'm like, yeah, I can't wait. And then right when I was on the camp part, you hit the button. You got one last win over me on that video.
What are you most excited about for Saturday night?
Last year when we were there, it was just a really cool atmosphere. If you've never been to Turning Stone, they have multiple different rooms with like different themes that you can go to. But this New York Rec and Sports Club that we're at, I mean, wall-to-wall TVs, games that you can think of, billiards, darts, video, arcade games. Then obviously us there as well to watch the show. But, I had a great time there. The Santa's Village, I don't know if that's officially open yet, though. The Gingerbread Village, I can go on and on. We had a great time there last year, and I can't wait.
The vibes inside New York Rec and Social Club are just what every sports fan dreams of. Okay. Like it is wall to wall TVs. They're going to have a live DJ that goes live on the dance floor area shortly after we're done. It's just the vibes are just perfect inside New York Rec and Social Club. It's going to be an awesome time. Ryan, I want to we're excited for that, but I'm also excited to kind of run out a take here. And I want to get it on your radar and maybe have you reel me back in a little bit, because I kind of talked about it on Radio Hit over the last couple of days. I was thinking a lot about this over the course of the bye and sitting here looking at a Bills team that's 9-2 that has really showed up well in basically every big time game they've played this season outside of the Baltimore Ravens. And I mean, you can make the argument to the Houston Texans as well, but I thought they should have they had a shot to win that game. They probably should have. But there haven't been a lot of flops. And if you look at the last 6 games on their schedule here, it is what we thought going into the year, this gauntlet that everybody talked about. It's no longer a gauntlet, Ryan. I mean, this 49ers team that's coming here this weekend, it is not the 49ers team that we went into the season expecting. The Los Angeles Rams have been a week-to-week crapshoot in terms of the quality of team that you're going to see. I thought that they were super uninspired the last couple of weeks. They lost a real bad one a couple of weeks ago. The Detroit Lions are like the one remaining major contender left on the Bills' schedule. And, you know, we all know what's going on in New York with the Jets, New Jersey, and then New England Patriots. Ryan, is it crazy to think that this Bills team could be sitting here on January 5th after they play the Patriots at 15-2 with the 1 seed in the AFC? Because I'm thinking it's as possible as ever. And here's one of the big reasons why. I'm not all the way sold on Detroit quite yet. They played a really good game against Detroit on the road a couple of years ago, and that was at the beginning of them starting to understand what their powers are. But I think this is a quarterback in Jared Goff who you can get pressure on him. I think that you can frustrate him. I think you can force him into making mistakes. And I just think that with all of the tape on Jared Goff, this is a Bills team that's getting healthier week by week defensively. And we don't know what the health situation is going to be in a couple of weeks. But to me, that's the lone game left on this schedule for a team that's getting healthier by the week. We'll talk a little bit more about the health situation in a minute. But I think 15-2 is well within reach for the Buffalo Bills.
I don't think you're crazy at all with that. And the Lions game is going to be a tough matchup. You mentioned Jared Goff, some of those passing weapons that they have at wide receiver, tight end. They have a great 1-2 punch at running back. Their defense, for the most part, has been very solid. I know they don't have Hutchinson due to an injury, obviously, but that's still a pretty solid defense. That's the one game left by far that will be the most challenging for Buffalo. Now, division games are tough. The Patriots can have a solid defense at times this year that they've shown off. They've been very inconsistent. It's a young team. The Jets are a mess right now, but again, that was a close game the first go around this year too. And you never want to necessarily count out a team like the Rams either, who, have you pointed out, have not looked good. But that being said, yes, I mean, there's no reason to believe the Bills can't run the gauntlet the way they've been playing. Excuse me, something in my throat here. The fact that they've gone 9-2 and they've faced some quality teams already. They've defeated the Chiefs, who, besides the Lions, I would argue would be the biggest matchup. It's funny. You mentioned we looked at this as a gauntlet of a stretch of games here, and I saw someone post the Bills' tentative 2025 schedule. Like, here's who they're most likely going to play at home. You just never know on a year-by-year basis if a team is going to continue to be great. And the 49ers, for instance, have been hammered by injuries this year, and it's taken their toll on them. And right now, there's a lot of uncertainty about some key players in this matchup for them on Sunday night. So you just never know. But the way this schedule is lining up for Buffalo, the fact that they're getting healthier, they're playing such good ball already before the bye week. Yeah, I don't think it's crazy to think they could knock off the Lions and then win the rest of these matchups that they have left over.
It's crazy to think, too, that like the toughest games in the division are in the rearview mirror, because I think beating Miami twice, which I think is the bona fide number 2 team in this division. You think about the New York Jets, where that was at the peak of what they had to offer, just trading for Devontae Adams. You're going to get them later in the season. Who knows if Aaron Rodgers will still even be in at quarterback, and maybe there'll be a tougher game if it ends up being Tyrod Taylor that's in at quarterback. We'll see how things transpire there. And then obviously the New England Patriots are interesting just from the standpoint of Drake May as a young quarterback, developing week to week, has some good moments, has some rookie moments, as anybody's would be expected. But it's the defense for me and that offensive line for the Patriots where I just don't think they're going to be able to compete against the Bills. And we'll see. If the Chiefs keep winning, 15-2 won't really matter, right? Because we'll get to the end of the season, you'll be a game back, and maybe that last game of the season won't matter. We'll see, because the Chiefs probably will play at the same time. I don't know. I don't think we actually have game times yet for that week 18. I just think it's interesting to think about, because this is a Bills team going into the season. It's interesting also. I've seen all of these receipts going around on social media, right? The Chase Daniels, it's going to take a Superman-like effort from Josh Allen for the Bills to get to 9 wins this season. The May Emmanuel Acho clip from FS1 where he goes on a rant about how they're worse everywhere. And it's like, there's so much of that but going into the season, the expected step back that the Bills were supposed to take. And now we sit here, and I thought it was fitting today, coming off the bye week, seeing just a loose as can be Sean McDermott going into this last stretch, knowing that, listen, they're a Thursday and a Sunday away from potentially clinching the AFC East. If the Dolphins lose to the Green Bay Packers on Thanksgiving and the Bills win against the Niners on Sunday, AFC champs 5 years in a row.
Crazy to think about, because this was the year they were supposed to get knocked off the division, according to national media analysts, by the Jets or the Dolphins, and everyone on NFL Network chose one of those two teams. No one had chosen the Bills on that one graphic that I saw. And, now you sit here and the Jets are an absolute disaster. They've taken, multiple steps back this year in terms of figuring things out. They have to figure out that quarterback position first and foremost. And the Dolphins are playing good football right now. They're beating up on bad teams, though. If they can knock off a team like the Green Bay Packers in cold weather, which has been Tua's kryptonite, then maybe they can make a run and for a wild card spot. But yeah, this division has not come close to the expectations that a lot of people expected, especially from the Bills' perspective, where a lot of them thought this team is no longer going to, one, win the division, or two, necessarily win double-digit games. A lot of people had them at that 9-win point this season, which they're already at right now after 11 games played.
We'll get back to this a little bit later in the show. I want to get to some more of injury updates from today. But I want to talk about a really interesting question that was brought up. Remind me before we get out of here to go back to that. Let's get to Keon Coleman here real quick, Ryan, because I think that's one of the big question marks about this week. Dalton Kincaid didn't practice today. He's still dealing with that knee injury. I think it's very unlikely that he goes this week. I think you pulled him out. They looked really good with Dawson Knox as that tight end one. You could elevate Zach Davidson again. You have Quentin Morris on the roster. No need to rush back Dalton Kincaid, and I think slow playing that makes a ton of sense. Keon Coleman with the red jersey today, he was limited, and so he's still dealing with the wrist. Caught some balls during individual portion. I sent those videos out to our insiders, which, let's plug that real quick. Become an insider today, 716-528-6727. It is $3.99 a month, but you get a 2-week free trial. But Keon Coleman, what are your thoughts on bringing him back now? Or is it a similar situation to Amari Cooper where, all right, let's let him get back to as close to 100% as possible? It was a big game against the Chiefs. You needed all hands on deck with Coleman out, Kincaid out. It made sense for them bringing back Cooper, had the 2-week to get rested with the bye. I don't know if I'd bring back Keon Coleman for this game, even if he's getting closer to being ready.
Yeah, I'm not sure either. Again, this is a non-conference opponent, and I know next week's non-conference as well, and that might be the game he comes back for. But the long goal here is to have these guys healthy for the playoffs. I know you're still trying to play for the number 1 seed, but the Bills proved they're up to the task last game against the Chiefs when they had Amari Cooper, when they had Curtis Samuel, Khalil Shakir as their top 3 receiving targets. Dawson Knox stepped up. The run game struggled, but in this matchup, I expect the run game to be able to perform better against the 49ers. So I think there's enough weapons there. Now, if he feels like he's good enough to go, then again, put him on a pitch count. Limit his reps a little bit. You don't want to see the injury get worse. You don't want to necessarily force him back into the lineup at this point either. So if he is going to play, don't make him play as many reps as he was pre-injury necessarily. Get him ramped up, back up to speed as well. It feels like they've finally unlocked something with Curtis Samuel, so I wouldn't mind seeing him play a good chunk of reps in this game against the 49ers with Cooper, with Shakir, as I mentioned. And then you have some depth there at the wide receiver position as well. So I'm not in a rush to bring him back necessarily for this game.
I think you make a great point with this, the Curtis Samuel piece. It's like he's starting to kind of evolve into the role that they had always envisioned for him. And I think you lean into that continually. You have Amari Cooper, you have Khalil Shakir. Those are your top two wide receivers. I think Keon Coleman can fit into that picture very seamlessly, especially in conjunction with Amari Cooper. But Samuel is the one that I think you want to continue to find the identity for him within this offense. And I think without Coleman in the lineup, it gives him more opportunities. Once you muddy the waters with him back in the mix, and we already know Matt Collins is going to have his role. He's not going to ask for too much. They're going to get him out there in certain packages. There's going to be games where he does more than others, and that's okay. He can fit into that seamlessly. I feel like Coleman, before he was injured, he was playing like 90% of the snaps. So he's going to be on the field if he's available. And I kind of want to see a little bit more of what this looks like with Cooper, Samuel, Shakir, Hollins. And I know they have Virgil right now, Jalen Virgil, as the sixth wide receiver. What I think is going to happen there is Matt Milano, if he's activated this week, will fill the open spot. There are 52 players on the roster right now. They have one available spot. That'll probably go to Milano. Dwayne Carter's practice window was open this week. He was full in practice today. So if they want to get him back into the mix, they're going to have to make a roster move if they're bringing back Milano and Carter. I think Virgil's the guy that probably makes the most sense to be cut, try to get him back to the practice squad. And I think then you re-rack those practice squad elevations. He can be elevated 3 more times the rest of the way, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, that would make the most sense from a roster perspective. And, Virgil elevated partially because of how quickly he's picked up the playbook and good blocker, solid blocker. But there's some interest in him as well. It's a big reason why a lot of teams will elevate a guy from sign a guy from their practice squad to the main roster. So they risk losing him in that case. But right now, it's more so about having your best roster possible entering December. And Dwayne Carter obviously is a guy that they drafted with high expectations. He was playing good ball before his wrist injury. Obviously, you want to get Matt Milano back out there, and as you said, he would take that open spot. So as they continue to get healthier and healthier, there's going to be some tough decisions made, but Virgil does make the most sense in terms of the logistics right now of who would be the odd man out.
So Dwayne Carter returns to practice. His window's open. Also, Tylen Grable, which I think is pretty interesting. There's a question about him from Aaron here on YouTube. Grable's been out for, I want to say, 2 months. He's been working off to the side the last couple of weeks. Now, it's a little bit complicated with his practice window because once it ends, he kind of falls into that category of, all right, day 3 pick, rookie season, was active for a bunch of weeks, did some things, got hurt. You slow play him coming back and then maybe just shut him down for the year because you have some depth on the offensive line right now. But the more I think about it, the more I think, listen, he was the swing tackle out of camp. They believe in him. He played some guard during training camp. I could see them getting to the end of the 21-day window, activating him, cutting Will Clapp again, and then bringing him back to the practice squad.
Yeah. And again, that's an easy decision in terms of who you would part ways with. That's no knock on Will Clapp. He's a veteran. He's been on the practice squad, though, already once or twice this season for Buffalo, and probably feel confident they can get him there. Now, whole nother conversation, and I know one of the insiders kind of had this in a question that you posted. It was, if Grable comes back, does he take over that swing tackle job? I would say no. I get that he won the job out of camp, but Vandemark's played so well when called into action, when given those opportunities. Whether it was just the 9 snaps with Spencer Brown being out on the 2 games ago, starting the entire game against the Chiefs. You got to earn the job back, in my opinion. I've never been a huge fan of guys losing their jobs due to injuries, but it does happen in sports all the time. And the Bills have to be smart about a day 3 pick who they like and they feel like really came along nicely this summer before just handing him the job based on what we've seen from RVD.
Yeah, but the other thing too to remember is the Bills just played in a game where they were down a tackle. So Ryan Vandermark starts for Spencer Brown. In game, Deion Dawkins has to miss a couple plays.
Right.
Richard Garage up off the practice squad goes in for a play. I think you're probably more excited about, and this isn't a knock on Garage. I mean, Sean McDermott was very complimentary of Richard Garage, the work that he's done over the last couple of years. It might have been Joe Brady. Somebody said some really nice things about him being able to go into that game for a stretch, coming up off the practice squad. But I think the guy that you just invested a 6th-round pick in, you'd be much more comfortable sending Grable out in that situation. Sure. And I think having them both available on the roster, Vandermark and Grable, then you have Alec Anderson on the inside as well that can play almost any spot. You feel really good about your depth on the offensive line.
Yeah, on paper and on the field, this has been the most talented offensive line this team has had under Sean McDermott. It's not just the starting 5 as great as they've been. It's the amount of depth that they have across the board, and that really speaks to Buffalo's drafting ability, ability to find guys and develop them, which, tip of the cap to Aaron Kromer for the job he's done as the offensive line coach. Absolutely like Grable back in terms of if there's an injury, that next man up, whether it's RVD or not. But if you lose Deion Dawkins too, then you have 2 guys, and both that being young, but you like both of them quite a bit in Grable and Vandermark.
Spencer Brown today said that he expects to play on Sunday. He thinks he'll play on Sunday. Now, he said he was going to try like heck to play 2 weeks ago, but I think the week off, get that thing a bunch more treatment on the ankle. He was wearing a little bit of a brace today, so that's something to kind of monitor over the course of the week. I think that you're in a similar situation. Like if he's close to 100%, you roll Spencer Brown out there. He's your franchise right tackle, paid him a lot of money. I get all of that. But I don't think the Bills will feel any type of way if they have to give another opportunity to Ryan Vandermark. But on the flip side of that, I was talking to Gene in Danger on the Fan in Rochester this week about this. Ryan Vandermark now is on a lot of teams' radar. I mean, when you're talking about a guy who has an opportunity to hit free agency this offseason, there's going to be a huge market for Ryan Vandermark, a guy that, probably is going to come into that $7 to $10 million a year range just based on that one performance. If he goes out and has another really stellar performance and builds on last week, especially if Nick Bosa plays this week, if Spencer Brown can't go, that's a big time spot for Ryan Vandermark.
And good for Vandermark if that is the case, if he has multiple suitors offering big money, because that's, the dream of these players, to wait for their opportunity, thrive in that role, and then get paid either by their team or another team. And with the Bills having invested already in Deion Dawkins and Spencer Brown, it's hard to envision them spending big money for a third tackle. But if that's what happens and he goes elsewhere, again, you're happy for the guy. You've watched this player develop from someone that they picked up off of the Colts roster, and he's come along so nicely. We talked about him last year at the beginning of the season, all training camp, about how good he looked on the left-hand side, and now he can play on both sides very well. And the position versatility, the flexibility there, teams are always looking for tackle upgrades. And, as much as left tackle is always the premier position on the offensive line, I'd argue right tackle has become just as important, and the fact that he can play both is going to make him a very valuable asset to some teams this offseason.
Excuse me, he's an exclusive rights free agent.
Oh, so
actually the Bills will have some control here. So that is a really advantageous position to be in if you're the Bills. Keeping a guy like this, like that, who was the last exclusive rights guy? I think it was Dane Jackson, right? They were able to keep him an extra year, and then he ended up going on and signing a 2-year deal worth about, I think, $7 or $8 million. Had himself a really bad missed tackle on the Patrick Mahomes run this past Sunday. Tough stuff. I'm a big Dane Jackson guy. I know he got a lot of flack from some Bills fans during his tenure. This is a late day 3 guy that, gave you a lot of competitive snaps over the course of his career. I always thought that he played pretty well for the Bills.
Yeah, and they find guys like this. They develop them. They go off. They sign elsewhere. It's part of the business. Jackson being a guy that got a nice contract this offseason, and when the time comes, Van Mark will be another.
All right. What is the other? Are we missing any injuries here? It seems like there's a lot of stuff to get to. Josh Allen said today that I remember a lot of Bills fans were talking about his during the Chiefs game. He had gotten looked at on the sideline
Yeah.
for his hand. He shook that off today, said he's completely fine. Obviously, still on the injury report. He's been on the injury report, Ryan, pretty much all season.
Right.
He's off it today, actually.
Look at that.
Did you notice that?
I did not notice that because when we kind of had the same mindset. You put out the one on them. I put out the one on the 49ers, and I was looking more so at who was on the injury report than who was not.
Yeah, he's off the injury report. That's a huge development. I mean, that's about as big of an injury update. And I didn't see the glove on his left hand today for the first time in a while. James mentioning Dalton Kincaid. We mentioned him a few minutes ago, but he didn't practice today. He's the lone DNP of all of the Bills injury report folks. And I don't think that's a surprise, Ryan. That's what we talked about.
Right. Real quick question for you. With Josh Allen and the glove, he's played so well with it. Do you think he just quickly dismisses it, takes it off now that it's quote unquote potentially healed? Or is this something where, I've kind of gotten accustomed to it? I don't mind it now. And it doesn't seem to be something that hinders his play by any stretch of the imagination.
I don't know. Quarterbacks are funny, fickle creatures. I think
Right.
sometimes to your point, right? Like, don't mess with the vibes that have happened this season. I kind of get that, but there's also a feel for the football that one of the things that I think you don't want creeping into things this time of year is turnovers, especially forced fumbles and stuff like that. I don't know if the glove makes him feel the ball better when he runs with it, but I think this is the least amount of fumbles that he's had all of his entire career. Now, he's running a lot less than he has over the course of his career. But that's an interesting question. I would venture to guess that, especially with the cold expected on Sunday, I wouldn't be surprised if he keeps it on.
Yeah, I'm interested to see if that's how it all plays out on Sunday.
I don't know. Any stretch of the imagination. We'll see
if
that goes down. Bills and Wolverines over on YouTube. Talking up our catchphrases here. And listen, if Kincaid can't go, last thing on that, it's similar to the Keon Coleman conversation. I think that you're fine with running Dawson Knox out there, even in the 11 personnel situations. Like, he is a guy that can execute in the passing game. He's a better blocker than Kincaid. I mean, every time I go back and watch some of these games where the Bills struggle, I mean, I went back and watched a little bit of the Ravens game today, and man, there are some plays where he just gets absolutely blown up in the run game. And you're like, what would that have looked like with Knox out there? And Knox is not a great blocker by any stretch, but he is levels above Dalton Kincaid. So I think in a game like this, potentially where there's going to be weather and you're going to want to be able to run the ball, I think having Dawson Knox as TE1, you're fine with it.
Yeah, you're fine with that. You're not too upset about Quentin Morris getting some run. He was wide open at one point in that game against the Chiefs. Just he and Allen didn't connect on that play. Davidson was elevated, made a nice catch on a play using his size, his frame. We talked about his hands a lot this summer. So they do have other players kind of waiting in the wings, and I get it. Kincaid, former first-round pick. No one maybe had higher expectations going to the season than I did for him. But there's, it doesn't hurt if he's off the field in terms of the blocking perspective, as you mentioned. And Knox and Allen already have that chemistry that we've seen over the years. So at least there's other players there where it's not a significant downgrade at the position overall.
I mentioned the insider text line earlier tonight, Ryan, and people can become an insider right now by texting 716-528-6727. It's a 2-week free trial, $3.99 a month after that. The Shout text line is brought to you by Carrie C. Byer, attorney with the law offices of Francis M. Litra, located at 237 Main Street in Buffalo, New York. If you or someone you know is seriously injured, give them a call, 716-852-1234, or check out litrolaw.com. And one of the coolest new features of being an insider, Ryan, is getting a chance to maybe join the show. after every Bills game the rest of the way, we are going to do a day after 3 big questions episode. And we're going to ask all of our insiders to send in questions, and we're going to pick the best 1 or 2 each week and have them join the show live. We've done 2 of them so far. We've had 4 guests. It's been amazing, Ryan. We're going to do a couple more of those over the course of the next few weeks.
Yeah, those have been a blast. Great questions, great interactions with our insiders. Always look forward now to that new episode format that you came up with pretty recently.
So before we get to, we got 3 insider questions that I want to get to. But I want to bring up a question that I was asked on a radio show earlier this week. Would you rather the Dolphins make the playoffs as a team that you've had a dominant run against, if you're the Bills, over the last couple of seasons, or are you hoping maybe on the back of your head that they don't do enough to sneak in? I thought it was an interesting question because at first I think the stock answer is, yeah, sign up for a matchup against the Dolphins in Buffalo, Tua going on the road, potentially weather. But the more I got to think about it, it's like, that is going to be the Super Bowl of all Super Bowls for Miami. If they got a chance to play the Bills in the playoffs, the 3rd time this season, it's always hard to beat a team 3 times in 1 year, let alone 2 times in 1 year. I don't know. The more I got to thinking about it, I'd rather the Bills face a Bo Nix for the first time in his career against the Sean McDermott coach defense. You think about a Los Angeles Chargers team who finally came up against one of the elites of the NFL and the Baltimore Ravens on Monday night and didn't quite look like the contender that maybe folks thought before that. Even a team like Cincinnati, as great as that offense is, I don't think that defense is anywhere where we thought it was. I just think back to that Skylar Thompson game a couple of years ago when the Bills should have absolutely blasted the Dolphins. And that was the DeMar Hamlin year. There was a lot going on, of course. But I don't know, Ryan, where do you land on whether or not you want the Dolphins in the playoffs if you're the Bills?
Yeah, I mean, I guess it really does come down to who the other 7th seed would be. I know you just mentioned the Bengals. I know they have not been great this season defensively, but Joe Burrow is having a heck of a year, and Jamar Chase is a phenomenal talent. That'd be one team I'd want to avoid as that team that sneaks in. I wouldn't mind playing the Dolphins for the 3rd time if I'm the Bills, if that's the one scenario right then and there. Tua says he's going into this game on Thursday night against the Packers to erase some narratives about how he plays in the cold weather. And it's been abysmal. So, even if he wins one game, there's a long track record of him not playing so hot in that type of weather. So, you'd get him at home, you'd get him in conditions where he hasn't played well. I would still take that over a team like the Bengals. I think Bo Nix, though, and the Broncos wouldn't be a bad matchup. To their credit, though, they're playing pretty good ball overall. The Chargers are this team that'd be, in my mind with the Dolphins, that'd be kind of a coin flip game. Justin Herbert's a very talented quarterback. I think Harbaugh does have them on the right track in terms of the talent, but there's always this team that finds ways to lose and lets you down if you're a Chargers fan. Even if you go back a few years ago against Jacksonville in the playoffs, they had that huge first half lead and they blew it. So that's another one where if they had to come into Buffalo, I think the Bills would win that game. But the Bills had some struggles against Easton Stick not too long ago, not Justin Herbert. So, an elite quarterback from the Herbert perspective who could throw in those conditions, in my opinion, versus a Tua who couldn't. It comes down to the team, but the Dolphins would have to be scorching red hot going into that game if they're going to make the playoffs. In my opinion, they really can't have much, if any, slip-ups, and that's why tomorrow's game is so big, not just for Buffalo potentially clinching the division on Sunday, but for their playoff chances.
Yeah, and I think, to me, the narrative, it's been a very strange flip for Tua the last couple of years. I think he hears a lot of the outside noise, and it probably irritates you after a while, but a departure from the calm, cool, and collective Tua early in his career, it just seems like an annoyed Tua when he talks about a lot of things right now. And I think more so than the narrative being about not being able to win in cold weather is the narrative, and it's not a narrative. Neither of these things are narratives, to your point. They're facts, right? He doesn't beat good teams when it matters the most late in the season. Like, the Dolphins don't beat good teams really at all over the last couple of years since they acquired Tyreek Hill. And that's part of the reason that, as high as everybody is on Tua in that offense, as I was going into the season, and this defense for the Dolphins have played a lot better this year. I think that Jalen Ramsey, they've done some interesting things with him. Chop Robinson is starting to come on.
Yeah.
There's some really interesting pieces for them. Devon Achane is one of the top weapons in the game of football right now. But the bottom line is, when it matters the most against teams, when you got to have it, I don't care cold weather or otherwise, it's football. Like, you're going to play in those kind of elements. It's about beating teams that are elite, that are trying to stop what you do best. And when Tua and the Dolphins have gone up against those teams over the last couple of years, they've just not delivered. And that's
Right.
to me, that's the narrative, but it's not even a narrative. Like I said, it's a fact.
Yeah, it's a believe it when I see it type of scenario, and if they can overcome those odds and beat some cold weather teams and make a run late in the season, then yeah, I mean, I would look forward to a third matchup between those two teams because they put on some pretty good games both regular season and even in the playoffs.
Mike Taylor, one of our insiders. You can become an insider by texting 716-528-6727. Any more conversation about Micah Hyde, or do you think he'd be an injury replacement only? I've not heard anything on the Bills' end about
Right.
entertaining the idea. Again, I think that Micah Hyde is always going to be on the back of their minds, right? Like, but you're sitting in a situation right now when you look at the safety position, they got their four, right? They have their starters in Taylor Rapp and Damar Hamlin, Cole Bishop, their second round draft pick. I'm sure that given an opportunity, if injury forces his way into the field, I think the Bills will be eager to see what it looks like for a guy that's gotten a chance to sit back and watch, got thrown into a game a couple months ago, then is now sat back and developed into a special teams only role. What would it look like? And then they always have Cam Lewis kind of in the back there. And in case of emergency, to me, that's what the situation is. I think it's Micah Hyde. I've been on this for a couple of weeks now. I know there's been a lot of people that have been banging the Micah Hyde drum. I just don't think it makes a lot of sense unless there's a massive injury where they need to bring a guy back in off the couch, Ryan. That's something that, it all sounds good in theory to bring a guy back that hasn't played all this football, but we're talking about it right now with Matt Milano. He's been played in 13 months. It hasn't been that long for Micah Hyde, but he hasn't done any football activity, right? He might be staying in shape off to the side, but there's going to be a ramp up period for him if you do bring him back in the fold. It'll be interesting to see, but I do think if there's a significant injury, like an IR required injury to Taylor Rapp or Damar Hamlin, I think it's a conversation they'll have.
That's just it. It's injury or nothing. I thought if it was ever going to happen, it would have happened around the bye week. You get him in, you start working with him a little bit. I'm not locking the door on Mike Hyde returning, but it's shut. The outside lights are off. I'm not expecting him to come through that door. I guess is the best way to put it, because as you said, the Bills have their four. Micah Hyde said it's Bills or nothing. At this point, I wish we had some access to Micah Hyde because he might be loving the retired life after having some neck injuries the last few years, being able to be at home with his young family and kids. And as much as he loves football, I'm sure there's been a lot of moments that he's been able to have this year that he hasn't in years past. And after such a great career, that there's definitely some benefits to just getting to be at home and be dad, for this next potential chapter of his life.
He was on NFL Network a little bit last season, where I thought maybe he'd bounce around in some media opportunities after he retired. But you're right, like, it's been radio silence. We just haven't heard from Micah. And to me, part of that you wonder is, all right, you leave the door open a crack. You see how this season transpires. I mean, the Bills are sitting here at 9-2, and it probably does feel like, all right, if I feel healthy enough, maybe I answer the phone, answer the call if they're calling at some point. But I think Damar Hamlin has silenced a lot of critics over the course of this season. I think Taylor Rapp has been exactly what they hoped he would be in like that next iteration of the franchise staple safety. Has he reached the heights of Poyer or Hyde at their peak? Of course not. But he's also in year one with the team. I mean, when Micah Hyde played his first season with the Bills, that's his fifth NFL season, right? That season for Taylor Rapp was last year in a backup role. So really, this is just the infancy, I think, of what Taylor Rapp is going to be in this defense. Week in and week out, it seems like he feels a little bit more comfortable. So again, I think this is on ice. We'll see if it comes up later in this whole season, in this process. We got a question here from Kyle, one of our insiders. Before we get to that, here's a clip from Matt Milano today at Bills practice.
Let's go.
So I want to give a little bit of a glimpse, if you will, into Matt Milano on the field today. Kyle asks, guys, what are the chances Milano comes back and isn't Milano? Furthermore, do you believe there's an internal conversation between the coaches and front office on how long you let him play out there if there is a clear drop in play from Dorian Williams, which I mentioned earlier in this episode, the season that he's had? I know that there's been moments in coverage and against the run where, Dorian Williams maybe hasn't been great, but I think there's been a lot of really good moments for the second-year player as well. Where do you land on that, Ryan, if he does get back? Because I think for me, how I would answer this question is I'm not super interested in 2025 for Matt Milano. Of course, it matters because you're trying to win a Super Bowl and you want to get one of your best players, your highest paid players back in the mix and have him be impactful. But in terms of like long-term outlook, I don't necessarily think we'll truly see the best version of Matt Milano until 2025. And so I'm not overreacting if he comes back and isn't like as elite as he was back in 2023.
Yeah, I think you nailed that. I don't think Matt Milano, when he comes back, is going to be that Matt Milano that we necessarily remember from a few years ago. He's gone through some serious injuries, both upper and lower body now. So I still think he's a very good linebacker. I think that when fully healthy, he is still an upgrade over Dorian Williams, and that's not a knock on Dorian Williams, who is having a fine season and really growing into a good player. But it takes time for, players to look like their old selves. And I think 2025 is when we would most likely see Milano maybe return to that form. That doesn't mean that the Bills won't be getting a good player back when he is on the field, when he is playing in these games, especially after maybe 3 or 4 weeks of playing and getting ramped up. But it's just like the Von Miller question we've answered over the years. Like, are the Bills ever going to see prime or that Von Miller of old? I don't know. I don't know if they'll ever see the guy that was getting a sack per game before his injury that first year in Buffalo. I definitely don't think you're ever going to see the prime version of him either with the double-digit sacks on a consistent basis. But they can still be factors in the game. Both, players like that. So Milano can still be a factor for this team. He's so smart and savvy as a player, much like Bernard. And Bernard's an elite athlete too, but you see how he reads plays and he drops back and he gets these interceptions and can spy and make and get sacks on Patrick Mahomes. Milano's so smart that even if he's not necessarily where he once was as an athlete, he can still make some big timely plays for this defense.
And here's the other thing, Ryan. There's no out on the Matt Milano experience. I mean, they restructured his contract to move on from him in 2025. You'd be eating $17.2 million in dead cap, and he only has a $16.1 million cap hit. In 2026, there's an out. You can gain about $5 million in cap space with an $11 million dead cap hit. But I think he's in the plans for the next couple of years. I mean, you hear Sean McDermott talk about what he's meant to the organization this year from afar. And then as he's ramped back up, being available on the sidelines in games, being available during the week to work with Dorian Williams. I mean, all the success that Dorian Williams has had this season, I mean, you can ask him. He did attribute a chunk of it to Matt Milano. So I think he's in their plans. I don't think even if we see a drop-off in play, it's something that I think they're going to be overly concerned about.
Yep, I think you nailed it right there because, again, the timeline, the injuries, getting back up to speed, it's going to take some time.
Last question from Nick on the insider line. Do you feel the way they have the captain's leadership situation this year has been effective? Is it better or worse than previous years? Or is it just simply the Diggs effect? I think implying that the removal of Stephon Diggs from this situation is maybe had a strong effect on the leadership dynamic in the organization. Now, the big shift has been, like, Ryan, for the last couple of years, they have had a ton of captains. I mean, there was one year where they had 9, 3 defense, 3 offense, 3 special teams. I always thought it was a little bit of a redundancy. But this year they went in a different approach. 2 captains, Josh Allen, Terrell Bernard. I've absolutely loved that dynamic for them. I think that it clearly positions a guy in Josh Allen to be the leader. And listen, there's a lot of there's a leadership council, right? That's what Sean McDermott is the phrase that he used. Player-driven leadership is really important in McDermott's, operation. And I think a guy like Deion Dawkins, who's been around for a long time, he leads a lot of that. Von Miller leads a lot of that. You look across this roster, there's a lot of pieces. Amari Cooper does it in his own way, even as a new piece. But I do think that there's an element, even though nobody in the Bills organization will probably ever say this publicly, to have the weight of the Stephon Diggs experience lifted in the locker room, I think is massive. And that's not to say that guys didn't love playing with him and in a lot of sense for him, but it's a lot. Like when you're that competitive and you have to live up to that every single day in practice and in the game, and the way that he took losses and the emotional roller coaster that whole dynamic creates, I just think it wears on teams. It wore out its welcome in Minnesota, and I think it wore out its welcome in Buffalo. And I think both sides were better for a fresh start, and we've seen that kind of materialize with the Bills through 11 games.
Yeah, quickly on Diggs, it wears on players. I don't think they necessarily have to choose sides, but at times they might have felt like they had to in moments with some of the outbursts, some of the ways that he handled things on the sidelines, leaving the locker room early and having to be brought back, last year by Latavius Murray and things like that, where, it kind of casts a cloud almost over the team in many ways. But in terms of the captain, the way they're doing it now versus how it's been in the past, I don't know if it's had like an overwhelming effect on the team. I like it better this way. Give it to a guy on each side of the ball that you feel is your leader. Josh Allen obviously being that guy on offense, and then Bernard, the way he stepped up last year, I felt like was a worthy and great candidate for that. I don't think there's necessarily too many cooks in the kitchen when you are doing the 3-3-3, but it takes a little bit of the luster maybe off of the title of being a captain, where it's a little bit more exclusive now. And, there might come a year where Josh Allen says, give that to someone else, or there might be someone that has stepped up to the point where they have been a locker room leader. It's tough to imagine Allen not being that choice for offense, but defensively too, you can kind of move that around. And as great as I think Bernard is, there could be a case to be made for a Christian Benford if he's signed long-term here, or Taron Johnson, who's been here and plays at an elite level, or Greg Rousseau if he's, again, extended and continues to excel as a player. So there's qualities you look for. Some of the guys that I mentioned might be pretty quiet, too, in terms of their demeanor. Maybe that's not what you want with your captain, but I do like what they've done this year.
Jonathan Torres over on YouTube says he just got in here. How did Mama Parrino allow this to happen? I think referring to my shaved face. Yes. She didn't allow it to happen. I did it while she wasn't home. The kids were poking and prodding, wanting to see Dad shave for the first time in their lives. Bad idea. Won't ever happen again. Apologies from the Parrino household.
I already see the stubble. It's already coming back in.
It is already coming back. Look at that. Look at that. We got a little 5 o'clock shadow.
That's right.
I think by Saturday at Turning Stone, you'll see the remnants of the beard. It probably won't be all the way back, but you'll see remnants.
Matt Milano beard. Not all the way back, but it's there.
Great stuff. All right. Shouts brought to you by Tops Friendly Markets. This Sunday, if you're getting ready, maybe you're hosting a party, maybe you're hosting a tailgate, head over to Tops and get ready with Sliders Sunday. Have it your way with King's Hawaiian at Tops. Every Sunday is an opportunity to enjoy delicious sliders made your way. Now you can win big while doing it. Vote for your favorite slider weekly for a chance to win tickets to the big game. Grab your favorite King's Hawaiian products from Tops and craft the ultimate sliders to make your Sunday even more special. Visit topsmarkets.com/Slider Sunday. For Ryan Talbot, I am Matt Parrino. I taped a look ahead to the 49ers with Matt Barrows from The Athletic. That will post tomorrow evening, right before the night game. So you can watch that taped episode. It'll be up on all the audio platforms as well. And from Ryan and myself, and I will not cut you off here, Ryan, I want to wish everybody a happy Thanksgiving. Whatever you celebrate over the next couple of days, I hope you do it with your family and you have a wonderful time. We are so appreciative here on Shout that you make us a part of your week whenever you dial in for an episode of Shout. We really appreciate it.
Yeah, like Matt said, happy Thanksgiving to everyone out there, everyone watching live right now, everyone in the comments, our insiders, overwhelmed by the support. We hope to see many of you out there on Saturday at Turning Stone, but enjoy this holiday weekend with your loved ones. Enjoy Thanksgiving tomorrow. If you're a Black Friday shopper, get in those lines and get some great deals on Friday too.
I'm going to be in those virtual lines, baby.
There you go.
We're going to be getting it done on Amazon. All right, for Ryan, I'm Matt. We'll see you soon.